Hey, what's up, everybody? Happy Wednesday, noon. Hopefully your Wednesday is going well. Mine has been eventful but uneventful. I have spent the entire morning looking for my Zoom recorder and cannot find it. I've torn apart just about the entire apartment looking for it, and I have failed in doing so. So that's a bit frustrating for me, but is what it is. I don't know where it is, so I give up. I have tapped out. So, all right. So, welcome to the Ask the Elephant, monthly Q&A with me and y'all. So, if you have your questions, now's the time to ask them. We're probably going to go, we'll go as long as we have questions. So, could be as short as 30 minutes, could be as long as 2 hours, but we're going to cap it at 2 hours today because I have a trip to get ready for because we're heading to Grand Con tomorrow morning for up in Grand Rapids, Michigan, being the guest of Grand Con. Teaching some games of On Mars up there, or hosting, running, however you want to word that, as well as one of 18 Lilliput. Have a meetup Saturday night, which I realized coincided with the Oregon Duck first game of the season against Auburn. Not super thrilled about that. So it's going to be dinner and then probably go to the sports bar to watch the rest of the Duck game. That's the plan. So, looking forward to the trip. Hopefully, if you guys are coming to Grand Con, hopefully you stop by, say hi, maybe we can play a game. So, what do we have? RP says, "Hey Ed, it's Edward, but hi RP. Hope you are well. I'm doing all right. Now that you've revisited your top Thinky filler list, any chance you could revisit your school night game list, preferably with games that are in print this time? Haha. I got to be honest." Whether or not a game is in print or not is of zero concern, and I will not bother checking into that. Reason for that is at any given time, a game is going to go out of print or come back into print, and you might not listen to it when we record it. So what if you listen to it a year from now? So it doesn't make sense. So I'm just never, ever, ever going to concern myself with that. As far as school night games, sure, that's a possibility. I could revisit a list that covers that. Yes. So that is something that could happen. So let's see. Let's try that. That fits a little bit better. All right. Hey, Matt. Welcome, Renault, everybody. Tony. Hey, Edward. Hi, Tony. Have you seen the heavy cardboard promo for Alubari yet? With the final art? I have not. I would like to. I'm excited about it. I'm very excited about that. But I haven't seen it yet. Hope you're doing well, Tony. I'll see you in a couple months at Spiel, obviously. So looking forward to that. Hi, Seth. Appreciate that. Do you know Mind Clash Games Anachrony? Yes, I have a copy of it with the expansion. Is that something we may see on the show? Absolutely. When? I don't know, but will you eventually see it on the show? Absolutely. Yes. Renault, surprise Castles of Burgundy did not get the #1 spot on the Thinky Fillers ranking. Well, it's funny you say that because I'm actually bringing that up right now. So I don't want to spoil anything as to what is or isn't on the list, so please be respectful of that. So that said, Renault, what's the listed playtime on Castles of Burgundy? Because I guarantee it's bigger than 45 minutes, and that was the cap that I set for myself for the Thinky Filler. So what we're talking about is the latest episode that just released on Monday for the podcast over on heavycardboard.com or your favorite podcast player. That is my top 20 Thinky Fillers. with two qualifications for it to be a thinky filler. Number one, 45-minute max listed playtime. There was one that may have stretched that a little, but that's it. But it still listed it as 45. So the second thing is a game that will not be a game that you will specifically go to a game day to play. A game day won't be set up revolving around that game. So that's how I quantified the thinky filler aspect. All right. Oh, Tony, I will take a look at Twitter. Thank you. After we're done here. All right. Thank you for that. Any thoughts on Tapestry from Stonemaier Games? I'm sure it'll be popular. Jamie hasn't reached out. I can't imagine he's going to. I could be surprised, but seeing as there's already a ton of previews out there already, I can't imagine he's going to. I'll be honest. So far, the only game from Stonemaier that I have enjoyed is Tuscany with Viticulture with Tuscany, which I think is a really solid game. Everything else has been okay. It's been fine. So other than that, could Tapestry be something special? Absolutely. But I haven't played it, so I don't know. Reynolds asking about the disaster way. So there's a bit of a language difference there. The unfortunate way that Cranio Creations and Barrage. Do I have any thoughts on it? I've seen pictures, and that's inexcusable and unfortunate. And yeah, the only thing I had heard or seen prior, or that I had seen with my own eyes, was that the 3D board was oversized for the box. These are mistakes that just aren't excusable in 2019 from a publisher and shouldn't be accepted. And the level of warping of some of the boards that I've seen, if they're replacing them, fine. I know the water droplets are tiny. I did see that. Here's my take on things. Everybody makes mistakes, whether you're a company or an individual. You're going to make mistakes. None of us is infallible. It's how you respond to those mistakes is both what people are going to remember and what's going to matter. So is it unfortunate? Absolutely. Am I going to hammer them for it? No. How they respond to the issues, that's what's going to matter. So I am entirely willing to give them a chance to do right by these things, and let's see how it goes. And I have no skin in the game. I have no, do I know the folks at Cranio? Sure. But I'm pretty straightforward. So I just feel that everybody should be given an opportunity to make right on the mistakes that they made. So let's see how they respond. Jeroen asks, have I played Euphoria by Stonemaier? I have. Really wasn't enamored with it. Great artwork. I love the theme on it. The component quality is fantastic, but the gameplay, race games like that, like Race to, I think it's 10 stars. It is. Those really will never appeal to me specifically. And yeah, and I have already reviewed Scythe, so if you're curious my thoughts on that, you can go listen to the episode on that. I thought it was a very well published and developed game, but I felt like it was developed to the point of removing all the rough edges, and I like games with rough edges. And I thought the combat was completely uninteresting and deterministic, which is boring to me. So, but I love the fact that the resources stayed on the board. So anyway, enough about that. Hey, Seth, well, you can always come up for the meetup on Saturday. Overboard Game says, I've told James to contact you about Magnate the First City. I think it'll be right up your alley. Have you seen it yet? I have not. I've been kind of in my own little bubble, just working on the show and getting everything going and just focusing on this. So I haven't, you know, the Gen Con stuff and then the recovery from that and everything. So I have not. So looking forward to checking that out. Overboard. Thanks. Yeah, and going back to the Barrage thing, Tribulation Solo says the problems with Barrage have been exaggerated due to the way they were communicated, and I think that's also a key thing. In 2019 is communication, whether it's interpersonal between you guys and me, or just two people, or the way companies convey things to the public, or vice versa. Both in the way it's conveyed, but also conveying the information, right? Like you can convey information in a kind and thoughtful and critical way, but the way that it's delivered also matters. So in both directions, right? So, hey, Just Play. Would I agree 2018 was a poor year regarding heavy games? I don't know. It wasn't the best, but was it poor? I think that's debatable. Is the market evolving more towards more mid-heavy games? Pipeline and Pax are amazing, but 2019, no, 2019. It's funny. I've read in various places that 2019 has sucked for games. Man, I couldn't disagree more. 2019's been fantastic if you're on our end of the pool. I mean, I'm going to forget some, so take that with a grain of salt. And in no particular order here. So we have the ones that you mentioned here, which are Pipeline, PAX Premier 2nd Edition. There is, oh boy, here we go. City of the Big Shoulders. Crystal Palace is supposed to come out this year, so we can include that. See, I knew I shouldn't have done this because I'm going to forget a bunch of games. Shoot. But nonetheless, there's quite a few really good games that have either come out. Shobu being another great game from this year. I'm trying to go through the list from Gen Con now, too. Point is, pretty excited about the games that publishers are coming out with. And on top of that, I wouldn't say that the trend is to go heavier. That's never going to be the case because the heavier side of the market is always going to be considerably smaller. The heavier end of it. Wow, that's terrible. Oops. It's always going to be smaller than the whole board gaming audience, obviously, because only a portion of that audience is going to be into the heavier side of medium. That said, as more and more people come into the hobby, that demographic, meaning the folks that like medium and heavy and etc., 18xx and war games, is going to grow larger. And so the demand for those games is going to continue to increase. So therefore, it's encouraging to see that publishers are catering to that market, and it's a meaningful market. I mean, there's a reason I'm able to do this for a living, because there's enough of you all out there that enjoy this part of the hobby, which I'm grateful for, which also means more and more folks to play games with, which is awesome. So, I think this year is shaping up to be a really good year. Oh, there's another one that's coming out this year that really enjoyed my plays of so far. Oh, BIOS Origins, High Frontier 4th Edition. PAX Transhumanity. See, I knew there were going to be games that I was forgetting. I've heard that Cooper Island is supposed to be fantastic. We'll see. So, yeah, a lot to be excited about for this year. Yes, Vince, that's always been the plan to get BIOS Origins playthrough ahead of the game's official Essen release. There will be a live stream before we leave for Essen. Yes. Have not heard Cole Worley's comments on Saga. Luke, sorry. Like I said, I've kind of had my head down working on the show and doing stuff here, so I haven't. If you would like to elaborate on that, I can comment on that, maybe. Yep, Black Angel, another game. Thank you, Chisholm. Good call. The new Fister game, Maracaibo, is another one, right? See, so there's a lot of reason. Now, are all these going to be great? I don't know. We'll see, but I'm hopeful. And I know a lot of the games that I have played have been really good. So, yeah, shaping up really well. Irish Gauge reprint. See, this is why the collective is so much better at this than just me by myself, right? City of the Big Barrage, City of the Big Shoulders, Clinic on Mars, 18 Chesapeake, right? Seriously, thank you. The Food Chain Magnate expansion, yeah. So it's good year to be all of us, huh? I have played the High Society reprint by Osprey. It's gorgeous and enjoyable, fun game. Didn't well. Go listen to Top 20. Hey, Asbjorn. So I love the way you described in Slack, Asbjorn, the part of Denmark that you live in. That was funny. Oh, speaking of Pax Emancipation, I had a question in Slack a moment. Have I played BIOS Origins already? I have done a solo walkthrough of it, but we have not played it multiplayer yet. Also, thoughts on PAX Emancipation, because it's a sponsored playthrough, we don't give our thoughts on the live stream of it. So my thoughts on PAX Emancipation. All right. So let's think about this. Kudos first off to Phil Eklund and everybody involved in the game for being willing to tackle the subject. I am going to completely not engage on the historical commentary from either side of the argument, and I don't mean pro or con slavery. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying whether Phil's view on it, or, for instance, the Patrick, the professor, the history professor that we had on the stream with us, his view on it being different. I'm not going to engage in that. I'm going to talk about the game itself. But that said, I thought that the subject matter was done well. And I thought it makes for a fascinating experience. I enjoyed my plays of it, but it's not my favorite PAX game. Early on in your first few plays, which is where I still am with PAX Emancipation, it's a game about learning the permissives, learning what you can and can't do, and when and why, and all of that. And so it's a game just like many in the PAX series, PAX Renaissance being another kind of what can I do and why am I trying to do it, and fighting your way through the rules overhead and the mechanical overhead of the game. And it's hard. The game fought back. We got pretty unlucky in places, no doubt. Collectively, meaning the players. But I felt like that was pretty true to how it... I'm not trying to compare the struggle in a game to the real life struggle of what it was to emancipate the slaves or emancipate slavery. But it's hard. And the game does a good job of modeling that difficulty. So it was fun in a sense that it challenged us as players. But I don't know that the parliamentary role or player is going to be my favorite because it's not very imaginative. It's about getting ships out, removing pirates or slavers. And so I kind of had somewhat mixed feelings on the game. I would absolutely play it some more. I'm happy to have it and have it stay in my collection. Is it a game that I'm going to clamor to play? Probably not. However, the mechanisms in the game, quite a bit of them I really, really enjoyed. And a couple of those were either pulled from or found their way into, and I think they were pulled from, Pax Transhumanity, which all that does is get me super excited to get Pax Transhumanity. So I think that game, the theme isn't off-putting to me because, again, we're on the right part, the right side of history in Pax Emancipation. But I'm looking forward to exploring the mechanisms and the game that is Pax Transhumanity more than Pax Emancipation, I think. So there you go. Hopefully that answers your question. And let me. Who was that asked that? Oh, that was Adam. There we go. And Chip asked in Slack, do I have any stories about Richard Berg? I never met Richard Berg, who recently passed away. We found ourselves last Friday down at the Cape hanging out with Mark Herman and his family. And Mark was very close with Richard Berg and was a good friend of his. So we passed along our condolences. And for those that don't know, Richard Berg has to be thought of as, if there were a Mount Rushmore of war game designers, he's got to be considered to be one of the people on that. So I haven't experienced many. I'm trying to think if I've played any. I have a number of Richard Berg's games, but I don't know that I've actually gotten any to the table yet. I may have, but I'm not sure. But he is, or was, one of the massive, he's designer royalty, I would say, for war game design from way back in the day. So rest in peace, Richard Berg. And asked if I'd ever played Terrible Swift Sword. Nope, but it's over in the library. But I haven't played it. Sorry, Chip. Oh, Yeroom mentioned Escape Plans 2019, right? There you go. Luke says Saga, talking about the Co-Whirly and his comments on it, is the code name for his new game in development, hopefully kickstarting later this year, early next year. Sparse details, but it has a mechanism that allows your current game to affect your next game. Hey, I love the idea of kind of a legacy type system for, I enjoy the concept of the legacy system. I don't know that I have found a game that I think has done it well. Now, that said, I do know that some of Phil Eklund's games have that legacy system in place now with BIOS Origins, BIOS Megafauna, High Frontier 4th Edition, and all that, to where you can it'll kind of seed the setup. Not really a legacy, but it will impact how the next game goes in the series, whereas you're talking about Codename Saga can affect one play to the other. I love the idea of that. We'll see how it gets implemented. So curious to see how that goes. Vince says, when I'm learning a game, watching a video, whether a playthrough, a how to play, or a simple overview video, hopefully on heavy cardboard, Vince, is an important part of getting a feel for the game. What board game videos do you find yourself watching more so than not? So this is kind of funny. Here's a little behind the scenes. We'll pull back the curtains a little bit. Most content creators probably don't watch a ton of other content. They'll click around and see what all's going on and stay abreast of things. By the way, congrats to Brothers Murph for becoming a part of, getting hired on, merging with, I'm not quite sure what the right terminology is, but over on Board Game Geek. So congrats, fellas, on that. So I don't find myself watching a ton of it for any extended period of time. I don't watch board game videos for enjoyment. I make them for part of my job, but also for enjoyment, and I play games for it. But honestly, I watch far more poker vlogger stuff and cooking shows on YouTube. That said, there is a symbiotic nature of some of what we do. So John from John Gets Games, here's a good example. He and I have both watched each other's videos to help each other prepare. Now, we didn't know it at the time, and I imagine this happens more than people probably talk about, but like he watched one or two of my videos to help, because if we put it out first, then he'll watch ours, or vice versa, to be able to soften that learning curve a little bit for when you're going through a rule book. So we still make use of playthrough videos as well. And in fact, ironically enough, I actually have been watching my own teach of On Mars and 18 Lilliput, since I'm going to be hosting games of that at GrainCon. I actually went back and watched those, and I have my teaching notes printed out for it, which patrons have access to. And so I'm bringing my teaching notes with me and having refreshed watching those videos to prepare myself to be able to teach it to folks in person. So there's that. But board game content, it's more or less, the occasional thing that either comes up in a Twitter feed or a Facebook, or I'll be honest, I'm not on Facebook a whole lot, more Twitter feed stuff, maybe Instagram, or something that Jess turns me on, or one of you guys pings me about. But otherwise, I'm just clicking around, checking on what all's going on out there a little bit. But for the most part, focused on my own stuff, which I imagine most content creators are going to be similar in that regard. Eric asks, how would you rate the various PAX games after your latest play, meaning of Pax Emancipation? And do you think PAX Premier First and Second Edition both have a place in a collection? All right. Second question first. Is there a space in a collection for, how does that, you guys can't really notice when I do that good. Is there a place in a person's collection for PAX Premier First Edition and Second Edition? Absolutely. And the reason I say that is they are very different games. Like, I think they're different enough to where they should probably have their own entries on BGG. It is not a reprint. It is a complete reimagining of the game. Sure. Are there similarities? Obviously. Is one going to feel familiar to the other? Absolutely. But they're completely different. PAX Premier Second Edition is far more approachable and far more easy to get to the table with folks if you're not having regular games of PAX Premier First Edition. Does that make sense? If I don't play PAX Premier Second Edition for a few months, I can still bust that out at a game day without having to prepare a whole lot for that. I could not do that for First Edition. Does that kind of put it in context a little bit as to what I'm trying to talk about with the differences? I hope. Now, so does that mean that everybody who enjoys Second Edition is going to enjoy First and vice versa? Absolutely no. Or absolutely not. However, there are going to be enough people out there, myself, Jess, and others included, that are going to enjoy both editions of the game. So is there a place in some people's collection for both? Yes. Okay. So now your first question, how would you rate how would you rate? I assume you mean rank, like where, like favorite to, right, Eric? Assuming that's what you mean. Okay, so here, I'm going to have to write these down because I'll forget. So we have Pax Emancipation, Pax Porfiriana, Renaissance, Pamir, and Pamir 2.0. I'm not including Transhumanity because it's not out yet and I haven't played it. So if I'm not forgetting any, that would be 5 of them. I think it's pretty easy to say PAX Premier 2nd Edition would be my favorite. I think I'm still partial to Porfiriana, although it's close between that and Renaissance. PAX Premier 1st Edition I haven't played in about 3 years, so you're going to have to, that's why it would be lower on my list, and then PAX Emancipation. But that doesn't mean that I already explained my thoughts on Emancipation, so, and my feelings on it. So yeah, there you go. Hopefully that answers your question, Eric. Dan says, PAX Emancipation seemed like a great experience, but not a great game. I won't say it's not a great game because I haven't played it enough to definitively say one way or the other. What I will say is PAX Emancipation requires you to work at the game and play it enough to get comfortable to where the game could really, really shine. Does that make sense? Oh, good question, Vince. What is your process for learning and grokking a game, i.e., understanding a game? By the way, oolong today here. I'm out of milk because we're hitting the road for a few days, so I tend to have a little milk, a little almond milk in my tea. So no milk means oolong today because I don't drink milk in green teas or oolong. So, all right. What is my process for learning and grokking a game? Well, first and foremost, I am very much a tactile person. Learning or trying to learn a game from just the rule book doesn't work for me. I thoroughly enjoy. I don't like punching games also, which I understand. This is why there are obviously a number of folks out there that really enjoy punching games, some of which are part of my game group. So I am more than happy then to allow them the joy of punching games. But either way, punching a game or not, bust it open and lay out all the components in front of me on the table here. Set up the game for usually like a 4-player game, or 2-player if it's a 2-player. You get the idea. Set up a regular standard game and then go through the rule book and move some pieces is what I do. I literally am, and I talk out loud. I talk to myself. I do all of this. So I like going through the rule book while moving the pieces around. It helps cement that for me. And that's why, even though you guys aren't actually touching the pieces, when on our live streams, when we do our teach and playthroughs, that's why it's important for me to do the playthroughs immediately following the teaches, because it helps cement that for me. And I would hope that it would do the same for y'all. So that's kind of my thing. And then from there, go through, and then I'll probably read the rule book a second time once I've gone through it, just messing around with all the pieces and, okay, that makes sense. But even so, until we play a game the first time, there is still plenty of, okay, now that makes sense. Whereas something just didn't make sense reading it from the rule book, and even with the pieces, moving them around, just doesn't make sense to me. And this is also an awesome thing about the group, and Jess and Martin and everybody included in this, is I can read a paragraph or read a couple of sentences, right? And be like, that makes no sense whatsoever to me. Like, I cannot understand what they are trying to convey. And to them, it's really obvious what it is. And I'll be like, okay, yeah, I see that now. But it just wouldn't click in my head. So after I mess around with the game for that first time, in a perfect world, I would be able to play a multiplayer game solo. Doesn't happen that often just due to time constraints. But we'll then play the game at a game day or a game evening, a game night, as it were. And then we'll have to reference rules, the rule book, or we'll go to BGG. If it's a brand new game or a prototype, a lot of times I'll call or text or in the moment the designer or publisher or developer if that's able, which often is the case, which I realize that is a invaluable resource. Unfortunately, I don't have Christopher Clark on speed dial, which, if you're not familiar with Christopher Clark, he's one of our patrons that watches a lot of the streams, and he has an appetite for rule books that is not matched by many people out there. And ahead of our streams, he tends to go through the rule books and read them and helps us with rules issues during the live stream. So very, very invaluable resource. And it's not just him, but he does it a lot. There are definitely other folks in the Peanut Gallery that do that. But after that, then we'll play a playthrough of it, and we'll fumble our way through, is what I like to call it. Because when first play, yes, we're trying to win, but it's more just trying to make sense of the game. And then after that, then hopefully we'll play it again, and then go from there. So hopefully that answers your question. And there have been times, as I said, to where if I'm getting to a game after the fact or later, I may go and look and see if they're John or Paul or any of these folks that do other, that also teach some of the games that, obviously not necessarily the heavy ones, but the mid to heavy weight games. See if there's a video on it and maybe familiarize myself with them with it that way as well. If time allows. So there's some of that. So hopefully that answers your question, Vince. And yeah, Chad says Pax Emancipation has that weird semi-co-op thing going on that's really, really hard to get right. And if you watch the playthrough, you saw me get a little frustrated through the middle of it, which I was mad at myself for getting frustrated, but I'm human. It happens. Because I was having to sacrifice myself and my points for the greater good, and then watch my sacrifice go to allow everybody to do the things that I actually just sacrificed doing so that I could help them. That didn't feel great to me, and I didn't. That's why I don't like co-ops or semi-co-ops in which, we're helping, but I also have to win. So that didn't feel the greatest. And I think the role there wasn't best suited for my play style, I think. And I don't think I realized just with the Parliament how much that was going to be the case. Sean asks, as my 18XX group grows, a lot of discussion has occurred around the operational versus stock games. Have you ever thought about having a conversation about the comparison between 18XX styles? That's something that we could definitely tackle. There's going to be more playthroughs of 18XX games coming in the upcoming months, probably post-Essen. Realistically, we might be able to get one between now and then. We may be able to get a coin game in between now and then as well. So that's what we're working towards. Take care, Vince. Seth asks, do you ever get frustrated that you have games in a library that have not made it to the table? Absolutely. There's 1,300 games in the library. We don't have anywhere near that number of streams. So, of course, that's the case. I was getting frustrated that the patrons weren't voting for automobiles, so I begged and groveled so that we could stream that one because I wanted to play it because I really enjoy that game. So of course that there's some of that, but instead of it thinking of it as frustration, I think of it as, you know what, delayed gratification, extending the anticipation of being able to stream certain games. Dan asks, what did you think of Paul Grogan's criticisms of City of the Big Shoulders? I haven't watched the review, so I can't speak to it. I know he wasn't super keen on the rule book, which I haven't read the new version of the rule book, so I can't compare. I can't agree or disagree. But I'll probably say that probably at least some of Paul's critiques are probably justified. I mean, he does it for a living. That makes sense. But I don't know. I don't know what the criticisms were on the game, so I can't speak to him. Sorry, Dan. Hey, Portos. Rado. He says most creators similar in that regard. I watch everything. God bless you if that's the case, man. I don't have that kind of time. Oh, okay, fair enough. You watch it if you were to watch things after the fact that he watches them at 2.5 speed. I don't know how you can follow that. I can watch things at most 1.5 speed. Um, by the way, I have been told that if you slow John down to, I think it's 3/4 speed, he and I sound similar. Or speed me up to 1.25 or 1.5. I think that's funny. Obviously, we're all friends. We're all friendly to one another. Okay, maybe not all of us, fair, but like John and I, and obviously Richard and I, Efka, Elaine, Shut Up and Sit Down, etc. Tom and the folks over at Dice Tower, etc. Yeah, and he says he's used to listening to everything at chipmunk speed, what we call chipmunk speed, so sped up, and so now everything sounds slow. Luke, uh, I'll truncate your question. Is second edition of Pax Pamir eligible for the Golden Elephant Award? In my opinion, yes. Seth says Edward and Rado playing a game together. Can we make this happen? Absolutely. I'd like to be able to do some produce some content with Rado at some point. He's in Seattle. I'm in Boston. But hopefully we can actually make something like that happen at some point. But schedules as they allow, that'd be cool. I'd be down for that. Hi, Tim. Oh, Rado asks, question for Edward. How heavy is too heavy, or does such a thing exist? It only exists when it comes to the war game side of things. Some of the monster war games, just never going to happen. And I'm not even talking about the monsters. I'm not even talking about the Case Blues or the DAC or oh shoot, I can't think of the other one that has 19 square feet of map space. Yeah, some of the monster, like those are obviously, like, I don't have the table space to be able to do that. But also like ASL, Advanced Squad Leader. Some of those just you're never going to see. OCS systems. So basically, what I'm saying is some of the really big war games, and I don't just mean big as in physically large table space, or that take 6 months to play, but also the super hardcore hex encounter, monster big deep war games you're just never going to see. I'm never going to get proficient enough, nor do I want to. That's just not my that is a step too far for me. Now, does that let me step that back a little and give an example of what is. So I have Empire of the Sun from Mark Herman over in the library. And when Jess and I were over at Mark's house on the Cape on Friday, he taught it to us. I say taught. He gave us an overview of Empire of the Sun in about 15 minutes and made it appear far more digestible than I thought it would have been. So games of that level, absolutely we could still do, and I'm excited to be able to do so. Obviously, we've done 18xx games before. That will continue. So even some of the big war games like Empire of the Sun, eventually we will be tackling coin games, etc. Euro-wise, this isn't a challenge to designers out there to try and make the most convoluted game possible. But honestly, and this isn't a criticism, this is just a statement of fact, that if I can handle and am able to present Phil Eklund's games, come at me. What else is there going to be? You know, I think that's the pinnacle. The one that I am nervous about, I think, or that I am concerned about the length of the teach, that's the one sitting over my left shoulder. Right there. BIOS Origins is probably the biggest one that I am most concerned about. And I'm going to be tackling that. So, no. Outside of the war, the deep end on the war game side, that's the only thing that I would consider too heavy for me. Good question, though. Hey, Lucas. Says, hi, Edward. Sincere thank you for the awesome videos. I haven't played board games for ages, and thanks to your channel, I'm hooked again. Just purchased Puerto Rico, which I'll be playing Saturday. Awesome to hear. Thank you for the kind words, Lucas. Good. And I like to think not only are we able to help folks learn games with the teaching aspect of it, but as well as obviously the playthroughs, but I like to think that folks can kind of, for those that aren't able to play games as often as myself or other folks out there, I hope that y'all can live vicariously through us and can kind of scratch that itch a little bit. It's not the same. I get that. Just like for me, watching a live stream of Stones or Live at the Bike for poker or whatever isn't the same as playing. But it does kind of scratch that itch. So that's how I kind of picture it for y'all out there watching us do the live stream. So hopefully that comes through for folks. And speaking of Puerto Rico, this arrived in the mail. I guess I can bring it over here, which is the new. Is it deluxe, or it's not the limited edition? I think it's the deluxe edition from Rio Grande. So I haven't busted it out of the shrink yet because I was going to do an unboxing. So if that's something you guys want to see, let me know. I might be able to do that later on today or when I get back from Grand Con. So, but thanks, Lucas. Appreciate the kind words. Hey, Peter. Chad, talking about the frustration in Pax Emancipation, you're a better person than I, Edward. When people started taking those disease discs, I would have started regressing the red berries back onto the board. But then you're tanking the game to where we can't win. And that doesn't feel good either. So, what can you do? Good question, Luke. It says, everyone on the stream you've called friends. Because they are. How do you manage teaching playing competitively, keeping it moving, and explaining options without taking over all while making sure your friends have fun. I would like to add in one more, which is producing the stream. I'm actually the one switching the cameras and doing all that as well. So it's a lot. There's also a reason why I don't normally win on streams. Some people call that an excuse. I think that's a bona fide reason, but I digress. So before a stream, before a stream, I remind everybody. There are really only two things that I ask everybody to do. Is one, keep it moving. Because let's face it, we have been guilty at times. Myself, Jess, Martin, and other folks, everybody who's been on a stream just about at one point or another, some more than others, myself included in that, have been guilty of APing longer than we should have because we're trying to be competitive, and there's stress of not wanting to embarrass yourself in front of thousands of people. And so you want to make optimal moves when possible, but you also feel the pressure of not making the stream drag. So that said, I tell everybody, remember, keep it moving, especially when we knew it was going to be a long stream, whatever that game may be. Please, everybody, keep it moving. So I tell them that. And the second thing is have fun. Ultimately, I depend on everybody that is a part of our game group or that visits, that comes in to do these streams. Otherwise, I mean, Rado does what he does. He doesn't have to depend on anybody, right? I mean, yes, Jen is there in spirit, and she does make appearances here and there. But it's Rado doing it from a two-player perspective. And John, it's just John doing it from a 2, 3, or sometimes 4-player perspective. In our case, it's a 2, 3, or 4-person perspective from a 2, 3, or 4-person, possibly 5 or 6. So I remind them, I count on them to be able to do this. But at the same time, they enjoy this. And I do checkups with them every few weeks. Hey, are you guys still enjoying this? Is this still fun? They get the luxury of getting to see these games ahead of you guys, ahead of the public, ahead of anyone else. And obviously they are privy to some secrets that you guys are not because, well, they have to play the games with us, right? So they get to be a little bit more on the inside than y'all out there viewing all of this. So that it has its perks. But it also is scary and is stressful for them because, I mean, look at what happened with Chris on City of the Big Shoulders. That was amazing how he took that. And that was frustrating for him. So I owe it to him to make sure that we play City of the Big Shoulders again so we can have a better experience. But it's important to me to make sure that everybody on the stream here in person is having a good time. So I remind everybody, and when you watch the Pax Emancipation video, you see me get frustrated at one point, and I'm just frustrated. So in the end, remember, we're all people, we're all humans. So I just try and keep everything moving and try and keep everybody else from getting frustrated or nervous or scared or embarrassed, or because when you make a mistake or you do something stupid, you do a dumb move, which Lord knows I've done probably hundreds of them. I mean, you have the peanut gallery immediately saying, "Oh, why didn't you do that?" I missed it. My bad. And so I try and just get everybody focused on having a good time. Plus, it does you guys a service because now you get to see the game as it can be played, right? We're not artificially making it look fun. No, we're just having a good time because we're around people we enjoy, right? And playing games. That should be enjoyable. Yeah. So, but it's hard. I mean, it's work. This is absolutely, keep in mind when we're streaming, like, the Pax Emancipation. I forget what time that went to. I think it went to about midnight. We started at noon, went to midnight. So was working for 12 hours straight with about a 45-minute break for food in between there. So it's just, I treat it with respect. I try and be very professional about it, but I also hope that we present the games in a fun way that is entertaining and enjoyable for you guys. But my first priority is to make sure that everybody here is having fun. Because if I do that, or at least enjoying themselves, as much as when you lose a game, it sucks, right? Oh, well. But at the same time, playing games with your friends. And as long as I do that, the rest takes care of themselves, or it takes care of itself. You guys out there watching are happy. The designers and publishers are probably happy regardless. Even if we don't like the game, if we present the game and let you guys make your own decision, everyone wins in that. So that's a very long answer to a not long question. But hopefully that helps, Luke. Oh, all right. So Rado's correction. I'm closer to Portland, my old stomping grounds, where I'm from, instead of Seattle. He says, if I ever get to one of the PAXs out on the East Coast, he says, he may end up on a live stream. You are always welcome, Richard. You are happy to come by and crash the studio anytime you want. Ooh, good question, Rado. All right, give me a second. He says, what do you think are your strengths and weaknesses in terms of teaching games? That's a really good question. So let's think about this. Strengths, I think I prepare well. I take the time to make sure that I am well-versed enough with 99% of the games that I teach on stream, that I do my preparation hours in advance, and sometimes it takes me right up to when we go live sometimes, but it can take me as many as 15 hours preparing to teach for a live stream, and making sure that I'm thorough on it. Still make mistakes, just like Richard does. We all make mistakes. I mean, even the guys that do recorded teaching videos make mistakes on there, so it happens. But so I would say my preparation is a good strength. Brevity is not. That would be a huge weakness. The fact that I teach how I like learning games, which if you like learning games the way I do, that's a strength. If it's not, it's a weakness. So here's a good example. Let me take Paul Grogan over at Gaming Rules. He demos a ton of games at conventions. So the way he teaches games is, okay, I'm going to give you just enough information to get you started and then ask questions. And then we'll as we go along, I will give you more information. I really strongly dislike that. That doesn't make it wrong, just makes it not what I prefer. Because I want to know the why. I want to have the information up front. Am I going to remember everything? No. So I'm always going to have to ask questions whenever I'm being taught a game. However, I don't want, and there's this. And, okay, now that you're here, there's this. Oh, well, if I'd known that, I would have made this decision. But the reason Paul does that is because it's a demo at a convention, so it totally makes sense. I get that. And I think he is very good at the way he does that. But for me, my teachers are long because I don't talk quickly. I feel, okay, so let's talk about things that I think I do well. I don't have a strong accent one way or the other. I don't know that that's something I do well, but I've been told that helps for non-native English speakers. I don't talk quickly. My normal cadence is slower than Rado's. It's slower than John's. But if you prefer Rado and John's deliveries, then you're going to not like mine. So is it a strength or a weakness? It's neither. It's just the way we talk. But for those that like that. But for me, I think my preparation is second to none as far as, because keep in mind, I do this live. I get one shot at it. So my preparation better be on point. So there's that. And I think I do it in a style, and I give enough examples when I'm doing things, when I'm teaching, that it cements those ideas, I hope. So I think I do a very good job of that. However, I think two weaknesses that I am always trying to get better about is a little bit more brevity to where they can be a little bit shorter at least. So there's that. I think that can be improved upon. I find myself funny. I don't know if other people do, so I put in little quips or little puns or whatever in my teaches. Some people might see that as a weakness. And the second thing is I can be better about being interrupted with questions. I tend to be, especially with Jess, I tend to be less patient, I think is a good way to put that. I think I could be better at that. And also, this goes back to the brevity thing. Sometimes when people ask questions, they're only asking for this much, and I give them this much of an answer. And it goes back to that brevity thing. So I think that's probably my weakest thing. But I would love to know from y'all what you think are my strengths and weaknesses, because that's how I see it. But how I see it is likely completely different than how y'all do. So I'm really curious about that. Yeah. Huh. So there you go. That's a great question. No one's ever asked that. I've never thought about it either. Good stuff. And yeah, Rado, you want to come to HeavyCon, you are more than welcome. The invitation's there. Reynold says, I have a stupid question. No such thing, Reynold. What defines a PAX game? Is it the river of cards from which or the market, I think is what you're referring to, getting the cards in most of the PAX games? I would appreciate a definition of a PAX game. So when I did a convention in one, I don't think it was a daily diary. I think it was just a short interview with Matt Eklund at Origins, so from June of this year. He actually tried to talk about what defines a PAX game. And I think in my interviews with Cole Worley, he has kind of touched on that a little as well. And I don't know. I have thought about that, and I don't know that I can do a very good job of describing or defining what exactly makes a PAX game a PAX game. So, okay, let's talk about what they all have in common, or at least the majority. They're all historically based themes where the theme drives the game. So so it's very much theme first. They all, and I'm looking at my list of, yes, they all have some market of cards, although most you're building a tableau of cards, but not all. Pax Emancipation, Transhumanity, you will not be actually building a tableau of cards. So there is a market in which you were purchasing cards or placing pieces on a card that will cost you some amount of money in order to do actions. Wow, that's really vague and broad, isn't it? I would have to think on that more, or maybe somebody out there can answer that better than I can. I have not heard what the Deluxe Castle of Burgundy will look like. And some folks want to see the unboxing. We'll see if we have time to do that today following this. And Paul Ashbjorn say they definitely live vicariously through some of the streams. So good. Oh, hi, James. Thank you. He says, hi, Edward. The wife and I are recent patrons. Thank you for the support. Appreciate that. Looking forward to seeing you at GrandCon this weekend. Awesome. Looking forward to it. Hopefully you guys may come to the meetup as well, but let's play some games for sure. Luke says, playing games vicariously. This is definitely for me. I have very few heavy gaming friends and fewer opportunities to play. So this community and your video sustained my gaming addiction. I don't know if sustaining a gaming addiction is a good thing, but the kind words are appreciated. Thanks, Luke. Paul, were you serious about doing a Knizia day at some point? Absolutely. That was Martin's idea. So the 3 games that we're talking about doing, it'll probably be tentatively. This depends on Martin's travel schedule because obviously it's his idea. He's going to be included in this, and when we can get 5 of us together, probably a Saturday or Sunday. 3 games that it's going to be are going to be Modern Art, Ra, and Medici. So we're going to do 3 streams in one day of Knizia. It'll either be 2, 4, or maybe 8 weeks following this weekend. I know that doesn't really help you. I get that, but you'll know when we know. George, or is it Jorge? Let me know which that is. He says, hi, Edward. What are your hi, Jorge, George. Hello. What are your comments on second editions making significant changes to the original with the purpose of making it more mainstream accessible, but sacrificing the heavy side of the game? So there's, I guess, to some degree, you could make that, say, like PAX Premier first versus second edition. It's definitely streamlined. It's a different game. But is it more accessible? Absolutely. Is it still heavy? I think so. Is it as heavy as the first edition? No. What do I think? What was the question exactly? What are my comments on it? I have no problem with it. It helps literally everybody in the process for doing so. You don't have to buy it. You don't have to trade for it. You don't have to own it. If you're happy with your edition of a game, no one's going to take it from you. You can hold on to it and keep playing it. Do so. So a second edition or a reimagining or whatever, reimplementation of a game, I have 0 problems with that. I see that as only a positive across the board because if it reaches a wider audience, this is a good thing because, I mean, from a selfish standpoint as the host of Heavy Cardboard, but also a selfish standpoint of a heavy gamer, this is awesome. Bring them into the heavier side of the pool so that it's one more heavy gamer out there. Awesome for all of us. But also, hey, they'll find the show. So from a selfish standpoint there also, that's great. But making a game more accessible does not somehow make it less of a game. And I would caution people from treading down that path too far because ultimately play what you dig. Again, if you enjoy a first edition, Steady and Emerald might be another example. I haven't played either version of it, but I have them both. Everything that I have heard that the first edition is the more heavy cardboard version of the game, and the second edition takes so much out that it falls a little flat for what people were expecting. But okay. play the version you like. So, yeah, I see it only as a net positive all the way around for everybody involved. The us as gamers, us as media, because, hey, we can compare and contrast, right? I mean, that's always cool. But also from the publisher and designer, the designer, in theory, they're going to improve in their craft. They're going to get better. They're going to see some things and be like, could have done that better. And maybe now they do so. So, and from the publisher, if they're able to have a game that they can publish that will sell, it's a win across the board for everybody. Provided it's good. Right? I struggle with your name every time on this. So is it Aquinashish? Says, I'm amazed at how well you players do on a live stream. Kudos to you and the players. I don't know. I think we all would agree, would collectively say we suck on stream. But I appreciate it. We do try. I mean, everybody is trying to win the game and everybody is trying to play their best. But if we're going to sacrifice something, we're going to sacrifice playing our best or optimizing for the sake of continuity of the stream. But I appreciate the kind words. Thank you. So, Rado, it seems a lot of people want a collaboration, so we need to do that. I would happily do so. Tim says, you may have already answered this. I have in the past, but not today. What are your chances of being able to stream or record anything from GrandCon? Well, stream, 0. The studio is not mobile. The studio, everything is hard mounted to the ceilings and to the walls and everything else. As far as recording, the very first thing that I said during this live stream was I have spent the better part of 3 hours tearing apart the house looking for my Zoom recorder, and I cannot find it anywhere. So, worst case scenario, I have my phone. I'm hoping not to have to use my phone. I may end up ordering one and having it shipped to the hotel up there. So audio-wise, I mentioned in the weekly look ahead, I'm definitely going to sit down and talk with Clay about Cooper Island and Clay from Capstone, about Cooper Island and Maracaibo. And I'm sure I'll sit and talk to Brian Lenz, who's the host and owner of GrandCon, but also any other publishers and or designers that are up there we'll probably sit and chat with for a bit. So it's all going to be audio side. And the reason I do that is I don't do a lot of recorded stuff. That's not really my forte. There are people out there that do a far better job of all of that than I do. And I don't want to wade into those waters. So that's number one. And number two, the podcast comes out fortnightly. The live streams, there's, 2 to 5 of these a week. So why not throw the podcast side of things a little bit of love? So that's why they tend to be audio only. Plus, you see enough of this face. Have a good one, Luke. I'm sure you left about an hour ago, though. Reynal says, I remember at UK Games Expo last year, you told me how Feudum was the hardest game to prepare teaching for. Is it the hardest you had to teach? If not, could you name a few? To date, yes. I have a feeling that BIOS Origins is going to take that cake. That's probably going to be the hardest teach that I do on the stream. So there's that. But other games that I either have been really nervous for or that have been really difficult. That's a good question. You're going to have to bear with me now while I go look at some of the videos. Root was definitely one. The original Brass. It's funny. There are people that critique the heck out of my teach and playthrough of that. What people don't realize or don't remember was that was our first sponsored live stream, and I could not have been more nervous in any way, shape, or form. I was an absolute wreck before that game. And the internet cut out partway through. Yeah. So Root, Brass Lancashire. Let's see. Feudum was definitely the hardest to prepare for. I'm going through and looking at some of the live streams. Any 18XX. So 1889 was another one because I am... The internet can be difficult and tough on you. And I'm always nervous when we do an 18XX or a war game because war gamers tend to be a lot more patient and understanding, at least live, and for the most part after the fact than some train gamers, and they can be very judgmental and everything else, and so that's tough. That's always scary and a bit intimidating to get ready for. Arkwright was another biggie. So there you go. That's a handful of the really big ones and tough ones that I've had to tackle. But BIOS Origins is probably going to be the biggest. Thanks for confirming the as a non-native speaker, Ashbjorn. Thanks. Oh, take care, Rado. Thanks for hanging out. He said good answers from Ed. Appreciate it. Eventually, we're gonna get Edward, or we're gonna get Rado to call me Edward. Eventually. Kurt says there are no better board game teachers on YouTube than yours, in my opinion. They are what got me watching Heavy Cardboard in the place. I appreciate that, Kurt. I think there are people that do very good job at what they do as well, but I take a lot of pride in treating this as my profession and treating it as such. So I appreciate hearing that. Thank you. I work very hard at it, and I'm glad to hear that you guys are finding value in what I do, but also appreciate it. So thank you, because I appreciate the appreciation, right? It's always nice to hear. So thank you. Okay, as Bjorn says, the only negative I can think of for the teachers, and I think he's talking about when watching live, is I don't give enough time for the peanut gallery to ask questions. So fair point. Now, let me ask this in two different ways, because one I can address, or one I can make, actually address and fix. The other I'm not going to. If you're talking about at the end of the teach, does anybody have any questions? Then absolutely, because there's a 20-second delay here. It's just the way it works. So there's nothing that I can do about that. However, what I can't fix is, are there any questions on like a step or a phase in a game as I'm teaching it? That I can't wait for, because what I'm doing, so what you guys don't see when I'm doing these teaches is, I mean, obviously, I have my teaching script, my teaching notes. I call it a script. It's not a script. It's my notes. But I have that I'm referencing. But I'm also making eye contact and doing everything on the table and looking around the table to everybody and making sure that everybody's engaged and it's making sense. And so I'm actually asking the players at the table, does that make sense? Do you have any questions? I'm not asking the peanut gallery during the teach if you guys have any questions for clarification, because otherwise it would add way too much time to the teachers, and that would not be practical. But if you're talking about at the end, Absolutely. That's something I can give a little bit of time to while we're resetting the board, shuffling decks or whatever from examples and stuff and getting all set up. So if hopefully that answers your question, and thanks for the feedback, Ashbjorn. Okay, so Felix says, in my opinion, most teaches involve an overview of the mechanisms followed by the comprehensive teach, I think is what he means. Edward is way better at the comprehensive than the overview. So what would make the overview better, I wonder, Felix? What could I do better? Because that's actually something that Jess has helped me with, because one thing that she has told me about the way she likes learning games is having an overview of, okay, not just, yes, you got a victory point track around the outside. The goal of the game is victory points. Yeah, great, obviously. Okay, how do I get victory points? Then give me the overview of the game, and then go into the comprehensive. So I started trying to incorporate that a little bit more in the overviews. It's not always easy to make that flow really well. So that's something I think also I could improve on. So if that's what you're talking about, noted, Felix, and something I'm already aware of. But if not, absolutely, let me know. Daniel, are there plans for a playthrough of the second edition of Neanderthal in Greenland from Sierra Madre? And yes, eventually. They won't be until later on in the year or next year, but yes, there are. By the way, that's hysterical. Jorge, or George, I asked him, how do you pronounce his name? And he wrote his name again, and that's funny. Admit it, that's funny. Like, is it Jorge or is it George? Right? See? Okay. So, Eric, not sure how to phrase this question. Do you think that with the increase in the number of heavy games, that designers and publishers are taking an easy out by making them heavy by adding rules? There is a clear, and I don't know like where the line was, but it's happened. A game 10 years ago that was considered heavy is considered midweight nowadays for the most part. They were far more mechanically simple, but deep for the heavier end, right? Tigris and Euphrates. I don't know why, but that's the first game that jumped into my head. Nowadays, there are definitely games that add complexity, rules complexity, or mechanical complexity to a game to make them heavier. And this is why I think the way, and I'm really proud of the way we break down how we comprise how heavy a game is. Because there are people that say, oh, it's just simply the decision matrix or the depth of the decisions. I completely disagree with that, because I think mechanical or rules complexity absolutely are going to contribute to the weight of a game and make a game heavier. Pax Emancipation, the High Frontier, these games are mechanically complex and absolutely contribute to the weight of a game. But they're also deep. So there's also depth and there's weight there. So do I think that there is a trend? I don't know if trend's the right word, but there are designers and publishers out there that are publishing games that could be streamlined but are complex for complexity's sake. I don't normally like that term, because a lot of times when people use that term, they advocate removing stuff. But then when asked what they would remove, they're like, well, this is pretty integral to the game. Well, yeah, So it's not complexity for complexity's sake, but there is some of that out there in some games, obviously. And there are some people that look at certain designers and say, well, all their games are just complexity for complexity's sake, which I disagree with. But yeah, I think there's always going to be some of that. There's never going to be a going back to just to where there were war games that were complex, but Euros were mechanically simple but deep. There's still plenty of those, or not plenty, but there are still some of those being made. But yeah, added complexity absolutely has become a thing that is more popular of late. Is it a cop-out? I don't know about that. I think that's where the quality of developers is really important in finding a good developer. Michael Keller, designer of Agra, as well as co-designer of La Granja and Solaris Mission. When I did my interview with him, my conversations with Heavy Cardboard, he had such self-awareness, and I thought this is so apropos for this, that he said he's an ideas guy. So he is all about layering on just components. Let me try that again. He is an ideas guy in that he is all about layering on layers of complexity and putting on this mechanism and et cetera, and putting stuff on. And it makes this huge, enormous tree. But what Oda, or Andreas Odendahl, did a great job of with working with him with La Granja was Oda would kind of trim the tree and make it into a sustainable quality tree as opposed to just this overgrown mess. And he said his first solo design, which was Agra, he didn't have Oda to rely on to trim the tree as well as maybe he feels he should have. And I think that puts it so well that how important a developer is to remove some of the extraneous things. If you listen to our review of Feudum, there are definitely things. I think there is an amazing game in there. And I think there are some really, really good things. And it's a really good game. But it's a bit overwrought and a bit underdeveloped. I felt that I think there were things that could have been developed out that could have made playing the game easier and focus more on the depth of the decisions instead of the mechanical complexity of the game. So with that said, I think as the hobby grows, getting quality, good developers that grow along with the hobby that are good at developing a game. However, there is a line somewhere out there where a game goes from an overwrought, underdeveloped complexity mess to sterile and losing its character and removing all the rough edges. And I'm sure there's a market for those type games. And looking at some of the games that sell, absolutely, there is a market for that. I would argue that myself and the majority of the people that enjoy the types of games that I enjoy and that we enjoy on Heavy Cardboard aren't those people. So you can take a game and remove all the character and remove the fun from the game and take it too far the other way. And that's where a good developer, a great developer, makes their mark and earns their credit and their money, is where that line is. So do I think some use it as an excuse to add on layers of mechanical complexity? Yes. Do I think that's the goal? No. I don't think there aren't too many people out there that are adding weight to a game just to add weight. I would argue that there are people trying to trim stuff out to boil it down to a more simple game or a simpler game, not going the other way too often. Wow, that was a really long answer to the question. Hopefully that answered it, though. And see, this goes back to what I said about the brevity of the teaches, that I feel like sometimes I can belabor things a bit much, or that I could summarize some ideas better than I do. Is it hard to design games like that? Ask Splatter. What was their last new game? Of course it's hard to design any game. I've seen the amount of hours in years and weeks, and I see the amount of work that goes into designing these games. It's really hard. And let's face it, 60% of these games are fine. Very few are special. Some of them are really not good. So yeah, it's hard. It's really hard. I have no interest in it. Zero. Before you ask. Hey, Camille. Is it G-asp or gasp? We're going to go with gasp or G-space-asp. Edward, nice to see you play Taj Mahal. I liked it back then, but played it recently, and for some reason it didn't click as it used to. I have had that experience recently. We played Navigador on Sunday. I really, really enjoyed my earlier plays, 7-8 plays of Navigador. We played it Sunday, and I was like, oh, it's fine. Still going to stream it. But, yeah, I've had that experience as well. I've also had the experience of going the other direction to where, and played it, and I'm like, oh, wow, why didn't I really like this. Yeah. So, it happens. I think as our tastes evolve, and we find out, I mean, early on, when you get into this hobby, you want to play everything, and you want to, or at least for some of us, want to own everything. And then as your tastes evolve, you go down a certain path or whatever, or you refine your taste, just like when it comes to eating, right? So I think that's to be expected and pretty normal. So not everything I liked before do I like now, and not everything I disliked before do I dislike now. Fair enough. Yeah, Capstone's doing really well. They're doing things right, I feel like. I agree, Dan. Yorick, have you ever rewatched a live stream to see what you can do better? I have, but man, that's hard to do. There is no tougher critic on me, I assure you, than me. And man, that's tough at times. That's really hard to tackle. But I feel like it's important in order to get better and to self-critique. Yeah, because there are things that I think I do really well that maybe when I go back and watch and I'm like, oh, no, wow, no. There are definitely things that I, in the moment, catch myself doing and I'm like, stop that. Or at least internally, I say that. Or things you don't see, like if I'm rushing a little bit, if I'm nervous, I'll rush a little bit, and you don't see this because the camera's not up when I'm doing the teach. I'll kind of like, just as a reminder to slow down, or Jess will put her hand on my back as hey, calm down, chill out, you're fine, relax, stuff like that. I can't wait to see and hear more about Maracaibo, Paul, which I will be doing this weekend. I have not, Paul. Dan, I'd love to see more teach and playthrough postmortems. What do you mean by that? Like roundtable discussions? We do them for everything that isn't sponsored, and the overwhelming majority of the playthroughs aren't sponsored. So if that's what you're talking about, I think we do quite a bit. If it's something else, tell me. James, do you learn games strictly from the rulebook, or do you have a back and forth with designers and publishers? Both. I go through the rulebook. We play the game. I make notes anywhere we have questions. More often than not, I have access to the designers or publishers a lot of the time, so I will tap that resource. Or if it's an older game, I'll go onto BGG and look up the rules questions. James, Edward, nice job on Black Angel, City of the Big Shoulders. Been playing Castles of Burgundy lately. Any work on a reprint, upgrade, premiere version? Also, Glass Road 2 Glass Road 2 player is tough. 4 player is much more fun. Fair enough. I appreciate the kind words. I don't know about Castles of Burgundy. Nobody has talked to me about anything on it, so I am in the dark as much as y'all. Ah, there we go. Jorge. See, there you go. Good deal. All right, Jorge it is. Okay, noted, Felix. He says Jess's suggestion is definitely a good one about, okay, look, yes, we score points, but how do you get the points? So what are we trying to do? And then work our way backwards from there. So I'm trying to get better about that as well for an overview. So appreciate the feedback, Felix. Derailer 12, late to the QA. Have you had a chance to look over Clank Legacy or Tapestry, the rule book at least, and if so, any initial impressions? I touched on Tapestry, which is nothing. No, not at all. And Jamie hasn't reached out, so I don't imagine that he will. If he does, then we'll take a look at it. Absolutely. But other than that, I have no thoughts or opinions on Tapestry. And Clank Legacy, not really my cup of tea. So no, have not, nothing. I got nothing for you on that one. Sorry. Felix says, I think what I'd like to be able to do is listen to the overview, and that to be enough for me to understand the playthrough, even if I don't know the full details. Does that make sense? So let me ask, okay, on that question. I'm making notes, obviously. So let me ask this, Felix, and others for that matter. On the teaching and playthroughs, right, when we live stream these, if I were to, okay, hey, welcome everybody, da-da-da-da-da, we do all that, introduce everybody, we do kind of a thematic, reading or overview of a thematic overview of the game. Then we talk about an overview. You're talking about a overview of, okay, look, the game's played over. I feel like we do that already, though. That's the thing. Like, okay, we give an overview of all of the components. I say we, but it's me. But overview of all the components. Then, okay, the goal of the game is victory points. You're trying to get victory points by doing this, 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 and this. And the game is played over 6 rounds, with each round consisting of 8 different phases in which we're going to do this, 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 and this. And then at that point, at the end of the however many rounds, we go into final scoring. Whoever has the most points wins. I feel like we do that overview already, and then I break down into the teach from there. So I guess maybe I'm not fully understanding where I'm not doing that. I'm not saying that I'm not, but I think I am. You see what I'm saying, Felix? So help me out. Top guilty pleasure games, non-filler, Camille asks. Millennium Blades? I guess because I shouldn't like that game. HeroScape, even though I'm still trying like hell to sell that thing because it takes up way too much room. I do not. So if anybody wants to drop about 12 to 1500 on HeroScape, let me know. I am the person for you. That's about it, because I don't have a lot that I play just to play. Everything else kind of falls in the purview for the most part. You know what I mean? Like Age of Steam, Masters of Venice, Neue Heimat, The Climbers, like all that kind of fits in with heavy cardboard stuff. So I don't know that I'd call them guilty pleasures. If I had a copy of Shipwreck Arcana, I guess not Thinky Filler. So that it's the best I got, Camille. Sorry. Yeah, James says, and it's the amount of time, the game length also factors in. I agree. That's why we include that in what we think factors into the weight of a game. Because can a game be heavy and be a 45-minute game? Absolutely. However, if a game is a 6-hour game or a 5-hour game, should that contribute to the weight of the game? Yeah, I think so. That absolutely makes a difference. So that's why we include it. Dan says, yeah, more roundtables. Everything that's not sponsored already gets a roundtable, so I can't do more than that. And as far as like a weekly wrap up with Jess or the other people that played, people's schedule probably won't allow for that. Doing the roundtables as we do is because we're here post game, and so we can't do more than we already do in that regard. Sorry, Dan. Well, and Dan says, I just like seeing more opinions on games. I hear you. That's where the podcast comes in, because that's where we give very in-depth, thorough opinions and reviews on games is over on the podcast. So check them out, heavycardboard.com or your favorite podcast app. Any chance at live streams for 18 Mex, 1824, 1817? Absolutely, yes, eventually, because they're getting more widespread or more mass market printings. I hear you. Yeah, I mean, I would love to work with Scott on these. I think that would be great. I think that would be a benefit, because I know there are other channels out there that do 18xx streams as well. But I think the way we present them is I think we do it at a level that I think those games would benefit from, or pretty much every game that is within the purview of heavy cardboard would benefit from. So yeah, if you're interested, reach out to All Aboard Games, please. Let them know that you would like to see these on here. No, Tom has not reached out, Tom Vassell, for my HeroScape. He probably has enough, in all honesty. Chip asked, when do we arrive in Grand Rapids? Mid-afternoon tomorrow. Okay, so limit the overview. Okay, that's something I can, yeah, no, I hear you, Felix and Paul. I appreciate the feedback. I want that, because I can't fix what I don't know it needs fixing. I can't fix what I don't know is broken. I know you're not saying it's broken. I get it. But I want to improve, so this is good feedback. I appreciate it. And hey, look at that. We're caught up, y'all. Nice. All right. And under 2 hours. Yay. All right. Whew. There we go. All right. So we're going to call it. I think the unboxing's probably going to have to wait until next week. I apologize because I have packing to do, and I really want to find this recorder. So I'm probably going to tear apart the rest of the downstairs to try and find it and see if it's down there. Plus, I have some more orders to ship out today before leaving, and a couple other things to get to get everything ready for this weekend trip to Grand Con. So, quick reminder, if you're coming to Grand Con or you're in the Grand Rapids area, we'll be there. Jess and I will be there. And the meetup, 7 p.m. And I should have gotten the name of the restaurant. You can sign up. It's a ticketed event, but it's free. So just show up. It's across the street from the convention center. It's a little like tapas restaurant, small plate restaurant. 7 p.m. Saturday. Come hang out with us. Play games. If you see us, say hi. I mean, we don't bite. We're friendly. Let's see what else. If you guys like this, like and subscribe down below. Like right there. And if you want to support the show, you see it going right underneath me. Go to pledgehc.com. You guys get benefits like Slack access, the teaching notes, and a host of other things. We get benefits in that I can continue to do this, but also when this reaches 800, we get an upgrade to the cameras. We actually add a camera to this, and it is going to be at a level that nobody else in streaming, I think, is doing this. This camera is really, really awesome. I need your help, though, because it's going to be a few $1,000s. So my rationale is I can afford it when we hit 800. So support the show over on pledgehc.com. Consider doing so. If any of you guys listen to Hardcore History, one of my favorite podcasts, Dan Carlin. Dude's amazing. I would listen to him read the phone book. Like I enjoy everything that Dan Carlin does. He has a little thing at the end of each of his podcasts. Hey, if you think this show is worth $1, Dan would love to have it. Dan, and I forget the other name. It's pretty much exactly like that. You guys get 2 to 5 live streams a week, just about every week, and you get a fortnightly podcast for the low cost of $0.00. Nobody has to do this. However, I like to think that we're entertaining and we help we enrich your guys' life and help you, steer you away from games that wouldn't be a good fit for you and your game group and steer you towards games that would. And so by that rationale, I like to think that we don't cause you to spend money. We actually save you money because you're only buying games that you think you're going to enjoy, either through watching the teach and playthroughs or through the podcast. So if you think that is, worth $1 or $2, or our base, which is $5 a month, we'd appreciate it. I really would. There you go. There's my pitch for why you should be a patron of Heavy Cardboard. If you think the show is worth supporting, the community is amazing. The Slack channel is amazing. We've never had to moderate a single thing in Slack. It's a 700 plus member community. Never had to moderate it once. That's amazing. So there you go. There's my impassioned plea or spiel for why you should be a patron of Heavy Cardboard. There are other content creators, Rado being one of them, that you can support over on Patreon as well. I definitely recommend you guys supporting people who you get value from. But if you get value from what it is that we create over here, I definitely would appreciate the support, y'all. So that said, you guys have easy for me to say. You guys have a wonderful rest of your week. If you're in Grand Rapids, be sure to say hi. Come by Grand Con. I'll be the guy in the walking boot for another week at least. And yeah, let's play a game. Other than that, in case we don't have a weekly look ahead, we should, but barring we don't get bumped from our flight on Sunday or anything. Rome, City of Marble next week, and Quebec are going to be the live streams tentatively scheduled for next week. So without anything else, you guys have a wonderful weekend. Be nice to one another. And you know what? Go out of your way and smile at somebody, or go out of your way and hold a door, or go out of your way and say something nice and make somebody's day a little bit better. It'll probably improve your day a little bit as well. All right? So there's my little tidbit of advice for today. Take care, everybody. Thanks for hanging out. I really appreciate the support to all of our patrons and to everybody that watches and enjoys the content and listens. Thank you. It really, really means the world to me because I couldn't do this without y'all. So thanks. And if you guys like it, spread the word. Take care, everybody.